everyone, it's AG, and today I will be talking about City of Girls by Elizabeth Gilbert. Now, if you're wondering why I'm looking like this, you should head over to the YouTube page of RIVERHEAD Books, link in the description. Either way, let's just jump into it. City of Girls is a historical fiction about a 90-something-year-old woman called Vivian. In the book, Vivian tries to recount her life to a woman called Angela, in an attempt to explain what Angela's father meant to her. I loved this story. It was so good and I just enjoyed it so much. The book covers Vivian's life between the 1940s and 70s, but the main focus was on the 40s. At that time, Vivian just became an adult. She was kicked out of college and her parents sent her to her aunt, who ran a theatre in New York. To pass the time, Vivian starts sewing and mending the costumes of the performers. And that's how she quickly gets introduced to the fast way of living in the 40s in New York. Vivian came from a family of WASPs, which are white Anglo-Saxon Protestants. It's a social group of typically wealthy and well-connected people, so she grew up quite sheltered. It's when she moves to New York, Vivian really comes alive. She starts exploring things such as her sexuality. One of the things that I most liked about this book was that when it came to the sexuality of women, there was no shame. Usually in books with promiscuous female characters, there is always this type of cloud of guilt and shame, and it was just very nice to read a book without that. I also loved how there was a lot of focus on the 40s and fashion. I love vintage clothes, hairstyles, and so my mind really had a field trip when it came to imagining how all these characters looked, and adding the glamour of theatre and the showgirls just made it even better. The writing as well was marvelous. Despite Vivian being rather old, there was such a vitality and youthfulness to her writing. It was so much fun, the jokes, the confidence, the awareness that I believe only women who have truly come into their own can. The account was so brutally honest, and that made it so incredibly relatable. Even though the main purpose of the story was to explain what the relationship between Vivian and Angela's father was, the main focus really was Vivian's life, how she became the woman she is. Like I said before, I really loved how Vivian was so self-aware. She was able to acknowledge that as a young woman she was incredibly reckless, extremely protected and privileged, and very self-absorbed. She made a lot of mistakes and some did come with consequences, but it was very nice to see how she learned and grew from them. In an interview, Gilbert said, "For years I wanted to write a book about promiscuous women whose lives are not beset by ruination because of their sexual desire. The typical classic Western canon novel about women who have sexual desires is that they always end up destroyed by it. I've always felt like that was a little bit unfair. So I wanted to write a novel about girls who are young and reckless and wild. Certainly, consequences happen to them, but they don't end up under the wheel of a train." That being said, the book didn't shy away from the bad. There are a lot of times in the book where you're just hit with the reality of the 40s. Abuse towards women is generally accepted, and when something happens, it's often the women who get the full blame, whilst the men get to go off scot-free. Also, this idea that women should stay pure and untouched until marriage, and if that's not the case, then they're damaged goods. Vivian doesn't fit that bill, but she learns to not feel ashamed by that. I could have spent the rest of my life trying to prove that I was a good girl, but that would have been unfaithful to who I really was. I believed that I was a good person, if not a good girl, but my appetites were what they were. So I gave up on the idea of denying myself what I truly wanted. Then I sought ways to delight myself. As long as I stayed away from married men, I felt that I was doing no harm. Anyway, at some point in a woman's life, she just gets tired of being ashamed all the time. After that, she is free to become whoever she truly is. It were these type of passages that made me feel very empowered. The main female characters were very different, but all of them exuded this strong sense of confidence and authenticity towards themselves and in the way that they expressed their femininity in their own way. And I just loved that so much. Either way, that's everything I have to say with regards to City of Girls. I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to leave anything and everything in the comments section, and I will see you in the next video.